Meet Bob Olson. Bob's the author of Answers About the Afterlife and the host of Afterlife TV, a private investigator who began investigating life after death in 1999. Bob now records his interviews with experts, authors, and people who've had extraordinary experiences so he can share it all with you. Enjoy the show.
Hi everybody, Bob Olson here with Afterlife TV. You can find us at afterlifetv.com. Today's interview is going to be absolutely amazing to you because it is an aspect of mediumship, people who communicate with spirit, where we are actually getting tangible evidence of life after death. By tangible, I mean something that we can hold in our hand, we can show other people, and these are called spirit drawings. Our guest is Rita Berkowitz. She's a spirit artist. She's a medium who can draw portraits of the spirits she sees. Fascinating. I can't believe more people don't do this, but to me, I met Rita when, after about a year into my investigation into life after death, probably, I think it was I know it was Easter of 2001, and she just blew my mind. So let's welcome you, Rita. Thank you so much for joining us today and enlightening us about this really fascinating subject that I think skeptics are going to love. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You, how long have you been doing this spirit drawing thing?
I started doing spirit drawing in approximately 1985.
Okay, so you're not new to this.
I'm not new at all. No.
Okay.
The old timer around here. Yeah. All
right. Well, that's great. I remember hearing about you in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
A medium had said, didn't know your name, had said, I know this. I heard about this medium who can draw the spirits that she sees. And then, sure enough, right after that, our friend John Holland let me know that you were having this. This, what do you call it? I guess a service. This Easter service on, I think it was Easter Sunday.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, I would love to go to that. That would be such a cool experience because, I was just in the thrust of investigating this field. But I had plans with my mother and sister, and wouldn't you know, they got the flu. Right after that, they contact me, tell me, we can't make it. We're just too sick. And I said to Melissa, my wife, Let's go down to Quincy, the Spiritualist Church in
Quincy.
And it all began. And I saw that day your portfolio of all these spirit drawings you had done. Now, that was, 10 years ago at least, almost 12 years ago. And you had a significant number of, not just the drawings you had done, but photographs that people then later, after the drawings, were able to collect and show you so you could put them side by side and other people could see how accurate these drawings were. Tell us what a spirit artist actually does.
Okay, what will happen if somebody comes to me, and there's different people that call themselves spirit artists that actually do other things, but what happens if somebody comes to me is I will talk to them and I will say, are you totally open? Is there somebody you're hoping for? And then from there, I'll go ahead and I'll start to get an image inside my mind of who this person is, what their personality is like, and what they look like. And then I start to sketch. And so it comes to me and it just comes. And sometimes I'll hear spirit say, no, their eyes crinkled a different way, or no, their mouth curled a different way, and that's when they'll see me take my eraser and change something. But it's like I get corrected many times as I'm doing this. It still fascinates me, Bob. I've been doing this for 25 years. It still fascinates me that as I'm doing this, the energy of the person, the personality of the person, I feel like I'm being taken over, and then the sketch appears on the paper. And so, and sometimes people want color, sometimes they want black and white. And I'm fascinated, even when we're doing color, where they'll tell me, no, the eyes are not quite there green, put a little more blue into it, or no, they're browner, or no, they're light brown, no, they're dark brown. So all of this information will come through.
And when you say they, you're talking about the people in spirit are correcting you
The people in spirit, yes. I
Yeah.
should clarify that. Yes, the people in spirit are correcting me. The people in spirit are letting me know that I'm doing it correct or not. And simultaneously, and depending upon the communicator, meaning the person in spirit, simultaneously their personality comes through, their sense of humor comes through. So I'll be sketching and I can feel certain things. Or if they were an artist, they'll be really detail orientated on the drawing, and if they have no patience for pictures, they'll rush me through the drawing. So it's a fascinating process that you go through with this.
Okay, I've witnessed this a few times. Well, I've witnessed quite a few times, not just my own drawings, but other people's as well. But very first drawing that I had, you were drawing my grandmother, and I remember you being corrected. And of course, you verbalize this as just so everybody knows. Rita talks; she's telling you what's going on, what's being said. You're getting a verbal reading at the same time that she's drawing. In some cases,
multitasking,
right?
yes.
Yeah, and she's also telling you, she told me to correct the eye here, so you correct the eye. And I actually saw that when you were correcting things, it became more accurate. So This blows people's minds, of course.
It's pretty incredible. It's pretty incredible. And when I demonstrate in front of large groups, it's done in a very different way now than it used to be years ago. When I demonstrate in front of a group, I work what's called indirect mediumship. So I will get the image of the person that I'm communicating with. I'll get the facts about the person. The sketch is done. I then turn to the audience and say, who does this person belong to?
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
So again, it happens in a different way than when you saw it at the very beginning, when I used to have somebody, who wants, and come up.
They come up.
I now just work indirectly with that, and the information that comes through to me is absolutely blows my mind.
Well, what's interesting about that is, I can only imagine if I were a medium in your position, I would want some kind of feedback. But, this is one of the things that skeptics, they're always worried that the people are giving you too much information. So here you are on stage in front of a group and doing this drawing, even asking.
Right. And I have nobody answering me until I turn around. The face is complete at that point.
Yeah.
Turn around. I've given facts about the communicator as I'm sketching.
Yeah.
Because nobody just wants to see my back.
Right.
And so I'm talking as I'm sketching. And then I turn around and say, okay, who recognizes this person? Who does this person belong to?
Yeah.
And then, occasionally it might be two people that say they recognize the person.
Yep.
But usually it's just down to one when there could be a couple of hundred people sitting there. One person will raise their hand and said, I know exactly who that is.
Yeah. What I love about that is that, one of the number one complaints I get about mediums, or even psychics, but in this case mediums, is that they ask too many questions. So, here you're not asking any questions at all. You're just getting everything from people in spirit. I like to call them people in spirit. From people in spirit, because that's what they are. And then you present it to the people after it's done. I will also say something that you mentioned reminded me. I saw you do this in 2002. A large group of hundreds of people, and in that particular case, you had the person on stage. That's when you were still having them on stage. Right, that's when I used
to call them up. Right.
But what was really cool, and tell me if this ever happens, if it happens frequently, you drew a portrait of a person in spirit, and the sitter, the client, whatever you might want to call it, didn't know that person had passed yet.
I remember that. Yes, actually, I ended up doing a group for that people. That's rarer. For that, it's a little shocking when somebody comes and letting them that a loved one has passed. And that actually happened with one of my students who told me a friend of mine had passed.
Really?
And I was horrified. I said, I didn't know that she had passed, and then she went to confirm it and then came running into the next class and said, Rita, your friend is dead. I said, I'm so excited. I said,
What a way to find out. Luckily, this woman, she wasn't upset. I think it was either a distant friendship or something that came through. She wasn't upset, but later did confirm. I do recall, because I was curious, confirming that she found out, yeah, that person really had passed in spirit.
She found out. He kept saying, Father, 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 but he was a priest.
Ah.
And that's why he kept saying, Father, Father, Father. And she recognized the face totally,
Yeah.
but it wasn't her biological father. But he kept saying Father, but he ended up being a priest. So, yeah, it was a very fascinating story.
It really is. And it also, a lot of people wonder if, you're reading minds or that sort of a thing. Obviously, she didn't know the person had passed.
She didn't know.
So,
and that, to me, is one of the most important things, Bob, that we know that we're not reading minds. And that's why, I've always asked Spirit, the first few people that came through to me when I was getting readings were people from my mother's family who I never met. And I had to confirm. And I asked why, because I had so many people I would have loved to have heard from.
Yeah.
And they said for me, they needed to prove to me that this was not mind reading, this was not a mentalist working, that this was in fact communicating with spirits.
Yeah, that's right. And, how many people seem to love this tangible evidence part? Because what I loved about it, especially at the beginning, was, you have a reading and then you go and you tell other people about that reading. Unless it's recorded and you can let them listen to it. It's never really quite the same.
Yeah.
But you can take this portrait that you've drawn, and you can just show it to people, especially if they know that person. That can be life-changing for those people to see that sort of a thing. Obviously, you're strangers to most of these clients. You don't know them.
Yes.
You don't know their relatives. So.
Right, exactly. And that's, and that's why I have on my brochure, if I haven't proven it to anybody else, I've proven it to myself that life is continuous.
Yeah.
But there are times that, we always have to remember that a drawing is a point in time. So they may show themselves about a year ago, I had a family here, and they were, okay, the drawing, blah, 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 blah. And then they went home and showed their daughter-in-law, it was her husband, and it exactly matched the picture she had on her cell phone.
Oh.
So they were saying, so I always say to people, when you get the drawing, because they're showing themselves as they liked the way they looked, not necessarily your last memory, that in fact, when somebody shows themselves for a portrait from spirit, they don't show themselves on their deathbed.
Well, that's interesting. Melissa brought that question up, that exact question up last night. I was talking about you, and she was saying, a lot of people don't see themselves the way other people see them.
Oh, absolutely.
So she wondered how spirits show themselves to you.
I always describe it this way, Bob. How many times do we get up in the morning and we look in the mirror and say, when did I start to look like that? Because it doesn't match the picture in your head.
Yes.
So if you think about the fact that they have a picture in their head of what they look like, and when somebody, and we'll say, liked the way they looked when they were younger, they may show themselves when they were younger.
Yeah.
Or, I've had people that have passed at 85 that showed themselves in their 20s, and I've had people that passed at 85 that showed themselves at 85.
Yes.
And so it's all how they accept the way they look. And I know myself, there are times I look in the mirror and go, oh my God, how did that happen? So, we have this tendency to do this because we have a picture of ourselves in our head. And again, that's how we know that we're not reading minds, because the person, who is coming for the reading has a mental picture of their deceased loved one in their mind, and sometimes it matches exactly, and sometimes they will show themselves at a different age. When I wrote Communicating with Spirits, the co-author had me do a drawing of her father. And this is a fascinating story. She actually didn't tell me who to draw, but I did the drawing of her father, mailed it out to the state of Washington. She lives in Townsend, Washington. And she looked at it and she was a little disappointed because she knew her father as a thin man. And the drawing was a man who was a little bit more robust. And she went through photographs and she looked at the photographs, and then as she put them away, a newspaper clipping came floating down onto her lap that matched the drawing exactly. And her husband, who's a state policeman, started to cry when he saw it because it was that overwhelming. Her father, at 42 years old, had a heart attack. And so he watched his diet from that point on. He died when he was in his early 70s, but he remembered himself as the robust man at 42 years old. And so that's how he showed himself. So again, it's a fascinating story how this happens.
Well, it really is. I had you had done a couple drawings for me, and then for my birthday one year, Melissa got a phone reading with you.
Right.
She got that for my birthday, where you could draw a spirit guide, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what was neat about that, in relation to what you were just saying, is that you finished the drawing. I knew verbally, who you were talking about. It was my great-great-grandfather. And so you mailed your drawing to me. At the same time, I didn't have a photograph of this guy because he was from the mid-1800s.
Right.
I called my mother. She scrounged one up from my aunt, sent me a copy of a newspaper clipping or some sort of thing.
Right.
Which was like the only picture we had of him. And yes, he was. You could tell he's a little younger in the newspaper clipping than in the drawing, but no
question
identical.
that it's the same person. Yeah.
No question about it. And that's the most fascinating one. I had Melissa had it framed for me. We have it in our home. I show that to everybody, and because it's absolutely fascinating, because I didn't really even know what he looked like until your drawing and my mother's photograph came into the mail at the same time, and I was like, oh wow, I love that.
Bob, I love it too. I love it too. When I see it, it still again gives me this absolute thrill.
Yeah.
See, wow, that spirit communicated that clearly. And and I always describe to my students that we are the extension cord between two worlds, because there's nothing sexy about an extension cord. I don't say, wow, I'm a medium, aren't I fabulous? I'm an extension cord. And so the energy of this person is coming through me, and that's what ends up being on the sketch. And isn't that fabulous?
Yeah.
It proves that life is continuous without a doubt.
It does. Now, just so people know, some of these, I've had a few drawings myself, and I've seen a lot of them. You have a lot of them on your website, and there's a link below this video. People can go to your website. They can look at all the spirit artistry that's there. You have lots of pictures. So you have the drawings that you did, the pictures that you got after you did the drawing, just so everybody
Correct.
knows. It needs to be clear. You didn't get the
Nobody
picture.
brought me a picture, said, this is my uncle, could you draw him? That's not what's happening.
That needs to be clear. And later you brought those two together, you put them on your website, and people can see. What people are going to recognize is that not everything is identical. There are key features, right? Eyes, nose, chin, mouth, hair, the shape of the head, the clothing, the jewelry sometimes the background, I think. Don't you sometimes get a background that is somehow...
Sometimes I do get a background.
Yeah. Eyeglasses, I noticed, very important. And these are the kinds of things that show up. What's interesting to me is, some people who have a lot of skepticism and will try to find fault with these types of things. What they're forgetting is that if even you drew portraits of living people,
sitting directly in front of me. I've said that so many times.
It's going to be the same thing.
If I was drawing a portrait of somebody sitting directly in front of me and they were posing, chances of it having more likeness than what the spirit drawings do is nil.
That's right.
The fact that they're coming through and how they're coming through, because I don't have somebody sitting in front of me.
Yeah.
The fact that they're coming through in this way, and having been a life drawing and a portrait artist, and instructed this and so on, I know how many times it takes to do a drawing of somebody until you get that exact likeness.
Right.
I actually think my record is better drawing from spirit than it is drawing from life. So
well, hey, the thing is also people don't recognize. I mean, you're also under time constraints. Now, first of all, when you're on stage, you're under a lot of time constraint. But
right.
Even when you're giving a reading, I mean, it's not like these readings last for hours and you got all this time. Generally, is it half hour, something like that?
The readings that I do are 40 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
And if I am doing a private sitting, then if they want the drawing in color, then we just do hour sittings.
Yeah.
Because it does take a little longer to do a color portrait.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing a black and white drawing, I would say probably about 10 or 12 minutes are actually drawing time. The rest of the time I'm communicating and just giving facts and information and so on.
Yeah.
And if I'm doing the color drawing, then I would say probably a good 20 to 25 minutes are drawing time. And I'm talking about, when I'm doing the drawings, I'm talking about what I'm seeing and what they're showing me. And again, sometimes they'll do it in a funny way, or sometimes they'll do it in a detailed way, or sometimes they'll go down one side and up the other. And one of the funniest ones that I ever had, I was drawing a portrait of somebody, and this man reportedly had quite a sense of humor. He started from the bottom of his chin and went up versus from the eyes and going down. And the family was hysterical laughing because they said this was so his sense of humor. It was amazing. So, it can happen in any way, and it's fascinating to me how it happens.
How do you choose, or who chooses which person you're going to draw? Someone sits in front of you, or they're on the phone, you're doing a phone reading, and okay, you started drawing. I mean, first of all, let's just say it's harder if someone says, and I did this to you. Someone says, draw my father, right?
Right.
Draw my. It's probably more powerful. I'm asking you. This is a question. Is it more powerful when they just kind of let whoever shows up show up, and then you get to draw that person because they're coming through very clearly, very strong?
Well, sometimes, normally if somebody is with me for a private sitting, I will say, is there somebody you're hoping for, or are you totally opened?
Yeah.
And I would say in the case, probably about a good 65% want a specific person.
Okay.
Because if they are grieving,
yeah,
and we are helping them with their grief, which is very much what a medium does, and they want their wife or they want their child, and you draw Great Uncle Frank.
Yeah.
Well, it's very nice to have a picture of Great Uncle Frank, but that's not what they wanted. And I'm not reading their mind, to help them with just to prove continuity of life exists. They want to talk to that one particular person.
Right.
So I do give them the option.
That's a lot of pressure on you, though, isn't it?
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a lot of pressure.
Sure.
But
I mean, even with readings, it's a lot of pressure. If you were just doing a verbal reading, to do a drawing, a lot added pressure.
Yeah. So in doing the drawing, here I am. They want their wife, and so I'm doing a sketch. And normally I will describe what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm seeing a woman. Her hair is very straight. It's combed towards her face. It's a blonder color. I'm feeling that her eyes were just absolutely amazing, blue-green, and I'm seeing them. They were very clear versus, and eyes have so many different colors. And I'm feeling that, I did one a couple of weeks ago at Circles of Wisdom where the woman said, she just made me do the lip liner so strongly, and the two daughters that were there were again hysterical laughing because their mother was the kind always had the lip liner on the outside of the lips. So I love the makeup details that come in.
Yeah.
And they're very, very touchy about how far their hair has receded or not, and women are about their makeup and whether they tweeze their eyebrows or not. So I'm fascinated by those little details.
And it's those little details. It's funny, I always say about a reading, a reading of spirit communication, I always say it's the silliest little things that are the most profound. And with these drawings, same thing. I mean, that's the whole thing. If you go in with an expectation that it's not going to be an exact, photograph of your loved one, but you recognize your loved one in that drawing, like I said, in the eyes, in the nose, in the mouth, in the hair style, even the clothing. When you recognize those sorts of things, but it's these little details, like you say, the heavy lipstick, or the way
lip
he wore
liner
his
in
hat.
that case. And the woman always had a desire. Her hair, when she showed me the photograph afterwards, which was very interesting in this one, the woman always wanted full curly hair.
Yeah.
So she processed her hair to death. And so when they showed me the photograph afterwards, the hair looked overly processed, but that's not how her mother saw her hair. And they said, you drew my mother exactly how she wanted to look. which again, that's a beautiful thing in itself.
Yeah.
That when we go to spirit, our over-processed hair or, the few extra wrinkles that we have just fade away. And they're
That's right.
perfect. just as we want it to be.
And that's what's so great about these drawings is because it's not just a visual thing. It brings through a personality. You're able to bring through the personality by making just all the things that you just talked about. That really brings through their personality. That means so much more. Why? Let me back up.
Okay.
You talk about seeing them. Are you seeing them in your mind's eye? Do you see them like you see me? How do you see them?
It happens a few different ways. Sometimes I'll look at the paper and the blank paper.
Yep.
And I'll see them. I always see them in my mind's eye.
Okay.
Occasionally, and they've done this to me a few times while I'm on stage, I just hear trust. And they show me nothing, and I just let my hand go. So that's like automatic writing would be, but it's automatic drawing.
Yeah.
So they just let my hand go, and okay, there I am. I'm sketching away, and then the face will form.
That only comes with experience to be able to trust like that.
I mean, again, when you're learning this, the one thing that a medium has to do is trust what they're getting.
Yeah.
And so occasionally they like to say, okay, do that, which is nice when you're on stage.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You would have been a good police sketch artist. I mean, because that's kind of what you're doing, really. The spirits are telling you what.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that. It's a very interesting thing when you're working with police sketch, and I have done a few.
Yeah.
When you're doing that, firstly, you're drawing somebody who is alive, but you're connecting to the visual from the person who was deceased.
Yeah.
And so they are many times giving me what they remember from the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and so it's a challenge. I've worked on a few cold cases that way, so it's a challenge.
I can imagine, and I'm. Yeah, that's one of those things. And sometimes the thing that I think about with the mediums and the psychics who do criminal work is, I don't know. I have different thoughts about life because of my investigations in this field, and sometimes I think, some cases are just not meant to be solved. I mean that possibility exists because of what everybody's learning as a result of that. So, I don't know.
And I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. And that the only cases that I've agreed to work on for myself are cold cases.
Really? Yeah.
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 Because the people are far enough away from it. Usually it's a police officer that can't let go of the case.
Right.
So in my situation, a lot of times it's been a retired police officer that has come to me and said, look, I've been working on this case for 25 years. Can you help me?
Help!
And help, yes.
Why don't more mediums do this? I'm sure there's, we got on bestpsychicdirectory.com, we got about 700 psychics and mediums, mostly mediums. I'm sure that a lot of them are artists. Why don't more people do this?
Well, the art thing is a very interesting point, Bob, because you're really putting yourself out on a limb when you're doing a sketch.
Yeah.
As a medium. So, I always say, I could say, I have your grandmother here and she made the best chocolate chip cookies. And then I have your grandmother here, she made the best chocolate chip cookies. And she had these incredible dimples with a mole right over her left part of her face. And, and that becomes a whole different thing. Yeah. And what the jaw looks like and what the hairdo looks like. And so that becomes a very different piece of information. And I've spoken to some mediums about working on the police work, and they say, one in particular that I've spoken to said, what if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
And what if what kind of karma am I creating if I'm wrong?
Yeah.
And so again, that's why I prefer working on the cold cases where there's not any confusion of a lot of emotion coming in.
That's right. And so maybe one of the reasons more people don't do it is it's just too much pressure. First of all, you can give a great reading. Like when you're giving verbal readings and then doing these drawings, you can give a great reading. And if your drawing isn't exact enough for them, they'll just throw the whole thing out the window, I imagine.
It can happen. And again, I've had where, one time a family was here and I drew their daughter, and the mother, The reading was great. And then she said, well, I don't know that it looks like her. And I just happened to say, which I don't normally do you happen to have a picture with her of her? And I looked at and I said, you don't think this looks like her? She says, well, it does. But she had a twinkle in her eye that I was looking for that you didn't,
Well, I had brought the drawing of my great-great-grandfather to the History Channel, and we were talking about a TV show, and I was showing it to them. I had it, everybody was looking at it. All these vice presidents, of production were there. People were loving it. One skeptic, who he was the head guy, he said, well, he looks a lot like you. So she just drew, something similar to you. And I'm like, well, what about the photograph? I see. Come on.
You know what? If somebody wants to be a skeptic, Bob, they're going to be a skeptic.
That's right.
And, and they're going to do everything they can to prove you wrong.
Yes.
Just to prove you wrong. And so you just say, you know what? God bless them. And let them go on their way.
That's right. And those are the closed-minded skeptics. Because I was an open-minded skeptic, and boy, I'm glad I was open-minded because opened myself up to a whole new world. Let me ask you this.
I was a skeptic also.
Yeah, were you?
Yes, I was. So the first time I heard these things, I was saying, what's really going on here? And I investigated it, and that's how my process started.
So that's fascinating. So the two of us, we start off as skeptics. Look where we are now, just trying to spread the message here.
Right.
I understand why people want to have their loved ones drawn by you, their loved ones in spirit. Why do the spirits want to show up and have these drawings done?
That's an interesting question. A lot of times they're trying to make their loved ones happy. It's fascinating when you get somebody, and the loved one comes and the person didn't like to pose for pictures.
Yes.
And you can feel that energy. It's like, okay, could you get this over with? Okay, you done yet? But I think that and I can only say this is a supposition, that for the loved ones in spirit, they want to feel their loved ones feel that connection.
Yeah.
Because the ones in spirit are still connected to the loved ones, but it's the people that are left behind here that have the feelings, are they really with us?
Right.
Can they really still be with us? So it's like, aha, they finally know we're here, and so it's that kind of reason that the people from spirit love to do this.
Anybody in spirit ever sort of refused? You knew they were there, but...
I had one very strange experience many, many years ago where there was a man who had certain prejudices, and his prejudices included my ethnic group. And he didn't really want to come through, and he thought of himself as an Elvis wannabe.
Yeah.
And the drawing kept coming out as Elvis. He didn't look like Elvis, but he was an Elvis wannabe. And, for me, that would be enough proof. But the wife said it doesn't look like him. And although he had the big pompadour and the, and the whole Elvis thing, and Elvis kept coming into my mind and, everything about Elvis. But he was so adamant about not connecting to certain people.
Yeah.
And you would think that would be done when you get to spirit. And I was shocked. I will tell you, I was absolutely shocked that this one particular, and that's really the only time that it's happened.
Is it possible, it doesn't sound like it, but is it possible that he did that as another way to prove, bringing through his personality?
It could be, and the fact that he kept showing himself looking like Elvis.
Yeah.
And it's like, he wanted to be Elvis. I mean, she actually showed me a photograph of him to show him in the Elvis outfit with the big pompadour, but his face looked nothing like Elvis. He just wanted to be Elvis.
Yeah.
So it's very possible that happened, but boy, it sure freaked me out, I will tell you.
I'll bet it did. What is your favorite part about doing this? You run into things like that sort of bums you out, but what is your favorite part?
Once in 25 years, I'll take it with a very large grain of salt. For me, my favorite part about doing this is to really see the healing that's happening.
Yeah.
To see the overwhelming relief. Mm-hmm. There's clearly I'm remembering parents who've lost kids.
Yeah.
And to see, oh my God, now I know for sure he's here.
Right.
And so many times people will see them or experience them, and they think it's their imagination, but they know that I don't know this person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because I don't know this person, they know that it couldn't have come from, me. And there was a very wonderful time where a young woman came in from Spirit who dyed her hair a different color every other week.
Yeah.
The pink and the rose color, and so she was, and she was riding her bike, and the family went home, and they said, wow, she showed herself with these red tinges in her hair, and the mother actually dug up a photograph with the red tinges in her hair. So, it was this wonderful piece of saying, yes, I know that they're here.
Yeah.
Yes, and even when information comes through, where sometimes people may not totally recognize the information, and then it comes to pass, and then you get the email afterwards, or the phone call afterwards.
Yeah.
One clear time, a woman came with her husband. I drew their daughter for them, and the daughter kept showing me a hawk. I have no idea what you're talking about. 3 times the daughter showed me a hawk. I have no idea what you're talking about. And then 3 weeks later, I get a phone call, and she said they went to the cemetery to put down a cemetery pillow. And as they were leaving the cemetery in the car, a hawk flew in front of the windshield, circled the car, and flew next to the car as they drove out. A thing like that happens. They couldn't have had it in their mind beforehand. They had no idea what I was talking about, and then there it is.
Yeah. I love stories like that. And I'm sure you have millions of them.
I have a million of them, yeah.
But it's those types of things that, that's what this work is all about, is trying to help people recognize, first of all, this isn't the end right here. This isn't the be-all, end-all. That life does go on, that our loved ones still exist. They're still in spirit. What a great way to sort of give evidence of that. To me, I'm all about the evidence. And when you see something like that, it's just, it's unquestionable. You can't question it. That's all it comes down to.
And so when that happens for you,
yeah,
when you ask the joy, what makes me love doing this?
Yeah.
And obviously, if I've done it for 25 years, I love doing it.
Right.
It's things like that when they come back and say, oh my God, yes, she is with me.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we know that what you brought to us is accurate.
Yeah.
And so, and again, all we can do is bring through the information.
Yep. Your website is thespiritartist.com, thespiritartist.com. There's an article I'll link to below this that I wrote about the first time that I met you.
Yes.
Geez, I wrote, like I said, 10, 11, 12 years ago. When people go to your website, though, they are going to be able to look at these drawings. What's that section called?
I believe it's called the gallery. Or
the gallery.
The gallery, yeah.
And people can look at the spirit artistry, but they can also look at spirit guides, drawings you've done of spirit guides.
Yes.
Just tell us a little bit about.
happens to be your great-great-grandfather, but in most cases, it's not somebody that is somebody that you could find a photograph of.
Right.
A spirit guide is somebody that elects to be with us for our advancement as well as theirs. They are our inspiration. They are the ones that work with us, that help us to do the work that we are trying to do. I use the analogy of, have you ever gone to a cocktail party and absolute brilliance comes out of your mouth and you think, where did that come from?
Yes.
We've all experienced something like that. Well, that's when your guides are sort of showing off a little for you.
Yeah.
We have guides that I always jokingly say I have shopping guides that let me know what somebody wants for Christmas and where to get it at the best price. Yeah. So we have that, but it really is for the work that we are doing. So you as a writer would have writing guides. Mm-hmm. For me, I have drawing guides. And the story of my drawing guide or painting guide was fascinating to me because I got the information, I went and dug it up, and the quote that was in a book that was written in the 1800s matched exactly to a critique of my paintings that was written in a newspaper after one of my shows. And that was, master of hands and faces, too interested in telling the story, not enough painterly quality, or both. And so I thought, okay, if it was just the compliment, but it was the compliment and the part they didn't like and the negative, that matched exactly. Yeah. And I'm saying, this is incredible.
Yeah. I just saw fairly recently, it was sort of a renewal of Oprah interviewing J.K. Rowling. And she was talking about, she didn't even have pen and paper. I think she was on a train, and the first Harry Potter book just came flooding into her mind.
Right.
This is the way, and as she's describing this, she's like, she had to get a pen, get some paper, and start writing this stuff down. And that's the way it just kept coming to her. And all I could think is she's just channeling it. She's channeling these stories.
And that's the way it works. And that's the same way it works when an artist paints or does, even doing the spirit art.
Yeah.
I know that it's coming through me. I don't feel like I am standing there just drawing. I know that it's coming through me. And again, when the details come in, or the eyeglasses match, or the print on the blouse matches, how could I know that?
Yeah.
How could I know that?
That's right.
Especially when they're phone readings,
Right.
So it's where I'm not seeing anybody. And so the information comes flooding through. I know my guides are working with me. I know they're helping me. And that's what they do with us.
Well, I highly recommend anybody who has an opportunity to go see you work, either get a spirit drawing by you. You can do it by phone, which is what's so wonderful about it.
Yes.
You do it by phone, and you'll mail it to them in this nice, safe tubular thing.
Yes.
You'll wrap it up and send it to them in a tube. And you also do these events, and if they check out your events calendar on your website, thespiritartist.com, they can see what's up and coming. I keep dropping my pen. They'll see what's up and coming, and maybe actually go see you do some of these spirit drawings on stage. And a lot of times, I know when we did it, we had an event with you. I had a camera on you, so everybody could watch you as you did the drawing on the big screen.
Right.
That's a great way to do it, so people can see what's happening as it unfolds. But anyways, highly recommend it. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us all about this really amazing gift. It's sort of a gift within a gift, isn't it? It's like
it is, because you have the gift of art.
Yeah.
And you have the gift of spirit communication. And you're putting the two together. And, this is where when people say to me, I've got fragmented parts of my life, I said, trust, it'll come together. And so I was an artist, but I was also interested in spiritual, phenomena. And then it came together for me in this way.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that it did. I'm so glad that I met you 12 years ago. And I'm so glad that we're friends, and I hope I get to see you again, and maybe you can come back and we can chat about some other things.
Okay, absolutely. It's been a joy.
Thanks, Rita.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's all for another fantastic Afterlife TV episode. Bob couldn't be happier. If you enjoyed this episode as much as Bob, please leave a comment on AfterlifeTV.com, Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. And don't forget to check out Bob's book, Answers About the Afterlife. Thanks for watching Afterlife TV.